Alright guys, so it's time for a rant video because I don't I don't know how to describe this. Besides, I was literally editing and I was finishing editing one of my videos to go up, and I just had a little just pop in my head, and I was like, yeah, you want to know what? I've never actually made a video on that now that I think about it. I've definitely talked about it. Oh, I've talked about it in length online, my opinions. I know I've done it on like in streams and stuff. But so if you're new to my idea, I am pretty strongly opinionated about animal abuse, and in my mind, this is animal abuse and abuse of power. What I am going to be talking about right now. So, I can't remember what state it is. I'll pop it up on screen. But there was about a month or so ago a law going around in that state, and people were petitioning to bring this law out here, which pretty much banned emotional support animals from public places. What is an emotional support animal compared to a service animal? Because they are vastly different things. And please, before you already go to the comments, listen to the whole video before doing so, because that happens a lot where I'll get comments of people when I do these types of videos that don't finish it, so they think a certain opinion of me and then click off before finishing it to understand why, because I like to, explain my opinions, my life, and I like to add, experiences from my life, which is why those opinions are based on. So I'm not just basing them off of, blanket statements and just things I've seen on the internet. They're actual from real life experiences. So, an emotional support pet over a service animal. A service animal is, by the definition, by the law, is a properly trained, certified animal that will help someone in performing a service, usually used for people with disabilities, high anxiety, and other illnesses. They have diabetes sniffing dogs. They have the kind that can tell when you're having a heart attack or a stroke. They have kind to actually help you with your daily life. They have others for, the generic one is you see them with blind people, but you see them all over the place. There's also ones that are properly trained to sniff out when you are having a panic disorder and attack. They are trained to be properly, well behaved. They are trained to be able to sense a room. They are trained to be able to be in a large crowd of people to make their owner and themselves feel safe. And they are doing a job. Sounds fine, right? Now, what's an emotional support pet? An emotional support pet is exactly how it sounds. It is a pet that does provide emotional support to someone, but the what's the proper word? The certification doesn't matter. And why it doesn't matter is because I know people who you literally go online, you pay $50, you email the vet info, so you know which pet it is and a picture of the pet, and boom, you have an emotional support pet. You see the difference there? Now, there are many emotional support pets that are properly trained, are properly regulated, are performing a service. There are others where people just don't want to leave their pet at home, and now their pet is going through stress. I am seeing this more and more doing the con circuit. I'm seeing this more and more doing events. I'm seeing this more and more just going out in my daily life. Now, there's a big difference from I want to take my pet places to my pet isn't trained and I just don't want to leave it at home. And now we're going to get into the stories for this, all right? Because it's like, well, I have an emotional support pet and they're trained, blah, blah. That's great. These are not the stories for the ones that are actually properly trained and doing a job. I actually have a family member who does have one that is properly trained, technically cannot be a service animal because the pet actually, ironically, has a disability, but they are properly trained to sniff out certain things, tell things, and there are limitations to it. So there are also instances like that. So we're going to get into it. So the one that sticks out first of my first time seeing this to where I actually got physically angry. I was doing one of my temp jobs a few years ago, and I was working at a speedway, working security in a beer garden. Beer garden is pretty much when you're at a I don't know if most events are like this, but when I did the car events and stuff, because there are cars and people driving and things like that out, you have to have people to make sure that people aren't drinking and driving. So you have a designated area for alcohol. Yes, people bring stuff in and sneaking it in all the time, and we can't control that. I had to have a lot of those arguments of people being like, well, I'm seeing people drink beer out of their cars. Okay, cool. Can you tell us where? Because by law, they're not supposed to be doing that. We can get them arrested. Like, kind of why you sign up for this. It's also why there's certain colored wristbands for certain things. So when I was working in the beer garden, it was such a hot day this day. And I saw so many dogs freaking out because at car events, cars are loud. Especially at car events at a raceway. So surprise that cars are loud at a raceway. The dogs were freaking out, biting people, attacking kids. They were shitting on the floors of the event. They were pissing everywhere because there weren't grass for the animals. It was a hot day, so these poor animals were on the fucking concrete with their paws probably blistering because it was a very hot day. We were given shade, water, and fans working at the event, and constantly throughout the day I would see more and more dogs, and I would just take the back of my hand. Fun fact, okay, also for dog walkers out there and just pet owners, take the back of your hand. If it's a hot day or it doesn't seem that hot, put your hand on the hot concrete at the back of your hand. If you can't hold it for 10 seconds, don't take your pet fucking walking. Your pet might hate it, but they're going to thank you in the long run, because if you can't even hold it 10 seconds, how are they supposed to handle walking on that? Unless you can find an indoor event kind of place or a dog park where it's safer, and then you have like cool grass to do. So I constantly would do that every now and then. It was like low time, and I was with another security guard, and who was armed security. I was normal security. They were armed security, and they were like, "What are you doing?" And I'm just like, it's so hot. These poor dogs are dying, and the security's like, I know. I can't tell you how many beeps I was getting on my walkie of dogs attacking people because, wow, surprise, surprise, these dogs are in the heat and this and that. And service animals don't do that because they are trained not to do that. Why were these dogs allowed into this, you might be asking? Well, they were emotional support animals, which is becoming a very bad problem here in California and in other states, where you're getting people who just don't want to leave their pet at home and their pet isn't trained, and they pay I'm angry. I'm angry about that. It's such an easy process that you literally find a form online, you give them $50, you print out, you give them your vet info, and they just send it to you. And businesses are then held liable for the damages your pet does to the service, to the industry. And then when people see real service animals and real people with disabilities and issues, they look at them and they're being told, no, you can't go here. And then I've had people try arguing like, well, they can't do that. They'll sue them with the Disabilities Act. They can. They actually can, because there are now enough cases to where you're seeing it. It's why you're also seeing an influx of children-banned restaurants. I don't know if that's just a California thing, but I heard it was spreading to other states. But there are some restaurants where, because people just don't want to manage their kids, they literally say, yeah, no kids. And it's not a bar either. It's just like a normal restaurant. They're like, no, you can't bring a kid under this age in here. And then people try fighting it and saying it's unfair, but it's because enough assholes are ruining it for the people who it was intended to help. And the reason for this law that was coming out was there was a woman whose service animal was brutally attacked because they don't fight back, because they're trained not to do that. And her service animal had to be, pretty much decommissioned. The dog wasn't killed, by the way. But the lady now had to get a new service animal, which also costs a lot of money because they're properly trained animals. And now her pet is emotionally devastated because they were attacked by a fake service animal, an emotional service pet. And nothing happened from it. They couldn't sue the other person because technically by law it counted. So that's why you're seeing more and more businesses now say, no, you can't have emotional support pets in stores. No, you can't have emotional support pets in this and that, because you're seeing people not do them properly. By law, they had to, unless they are performing the service, they have to be wearing a vest, wearing a very specific leash. They have to be on the ground, unless, like I said, performing a certain service in that time. They have to have their papers on you. They do not, keep this in mind if you do actually have these issues and you have an animal. They legally cannot ask you what your disability is or your anxiety is or whatever, but they can ask you what the animal does for a service. And if you just kind of give them a blank stare and saying it's just a support pet, then they can kick you out. So keep that in mind as a warning to the people who this really is an issue for. And I say that because I've had family members be kicked out, and I've also had family members who were fake and be kicked out of things because of these people. And another instance of when this was terrible was, like I said, these besides that big event, was a few years later. I was in a grocery store. I was in a goddamn grocery store, and there were these two ladies in the checkout. I was in the checkout line, and there was only like one register open at the time because it was late. And I remember this so clearly. They brought a pit bull in, and the pit bull, while they were checking out, just took a giant dump in the middle of the aisle. The cashier stopped. I stopped, and it was just like a dead halt. And the cashier went to the woman and was like, "Miss, you need to pick that up." And she's like, "No, I don't. It's a service dog." And he's like, "Yes, you do." It's like, "No, I don't." And the two women and the pit bull left with the giant dog turd in the middle of the aisle in the only working register while the line was behind me. And people were cursing at the lady and getting mad, and I was just like disassociating about what just happened in front of me. And this is a supermarket where there is food and people have diseases. Some people are immune compromised and they can't clean up this gross lady's dog crap. And now, in all of those people's minds, they are now going to associate service animals with that. Because when I see animals freaking out like that, I remember those times. I'm like, yep, that's not a proper service animal. They're not wearing the vest, they're not wearing the leash, and they're just, being crazy, or the poor animal is suffering because the animal doesn't know what to do. Because you're seeing people bring these animals into cons that don't know how to deal with big crowds, so they're like, they're peeing and shitting in place, and then the people don't want to pick it up because realistically no one likes picking it up. But then you have these health issues and these health code things, and it's making a terrible name for actual service animals and actual people who have the issues that need it. And to my mind, it should not be that easy to get that stupid tag and then get the end all be all thing. Because then, yes, they can leave the store. Yes, they can leave the restaurant after not paying. Yes, they can do this and that. I've also seen times where my husband and I would be in a restaurant and someone would bring in their dog and they would have the dog right at the table. Fun fact, you're not allowed to have them at the table. By law, they have to be under the table. And they can't be seen and they can't be being fed. Unless, big unless, it is at a dog restaurant, like, and this isn't sponsored or anything, but like, oh crap, I'll have a picture of it on screen, but I know we went there with my family's dog. And Lazy Dog, it was Lazy Dog, the Lazy Dog restaurant, where they literally have an outside eating area to where you eat outside and your pet can eat outside, and they have a little dog menu and even I think a cat menu too, if you can bring your cat, and it's like, those restaurants don't count because they allow that sort of thing. Or restaurants will be like, okay, we can allow your animal in, but you have to eat outside in case there are people with allergies, and then these people will throw a fit. Most people who actually have this, and they understand, don't really care, and now it's becoming harder and harder for them when their life is already harder to begin with. It's kind of like that spoons metaphor I keep seeing everywhere. But you're seeing it here, where, you're seeing people with full spoons who just don't want to throw away any spoons, and then people who, they have to just get out of bed and to get through their day are already starting without 2 less spoons. The people with no spoons who don't want to waste their time and don't want to do any effort are making it bad for the people who already have a hard time. So please stop doing this. And if you're bitching that getting your pet certified properly costs too much money, or your pet doesn't surpass the requirements to be one, then that tells you that animal cannot be a service animal. And, there's a whole other thing where, like, oh, you're right, it shouldn't be this much money. It shouldn't go into this much stuff. You shouldn't have to be this and that. You're right, but at the same time, You got to look at the people whose jobs it is to train the animals. These animals aren't just born that way. They are trained, and that's why you also see a lot of animals where they're really well-behaved animals, but there's like for 1 or 2 reasons they couldn't pass, and they can still get those animals to have good homes in those cases. But you're seeing these people who are just lazy, and they don't want to, they're lazy, or they just take their dog everywhere, or their cat everywhere. I mostly see it with dogs over anything else. But you can tell a real service animal from a fake one, and it makes me really upset that I'm seeing more and more people do this, because while I was at a con recently, I saw a bunch of people with their dogs who were super freaking scared and super nervous at all the weird people and all the noises and the sounds, and the people are just pulling their dog along like, whatever, and you're just sitting here like, that seems so mean. That seems so mean to the poor animal, and that sure seems mean to the people who actually need proper regulated service animals. So yes, I signed the law that's going to ban emotional support pets that aren't properly trained from public places, because there are enough assholes that are ruining it and destroying it for the people who actually need it. So there's my rant, there's my ramble. I hope you guys enjoyed. All of my social medias, my merch, my Patreon, my blah 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 is in the Linktree link down below, as well as other places to follow me, because YouTube likes to not tell people when I post videos. And as always, guys, I will see you next time. Bye.